You know, when we think about the world's ice melting, our minds usually jump straight to rising sea levels, right? But what if the biggest change isn't happening to our coastlines, but inside our own heads? Today, we're going to dig into how the disappearing cryosphere is pulling a trigger on a really deep shift in our psychology, our ethics, and our whole sense of who we are on this planet.
Yeah, just think about that for a second. The core idea we're exploring is that the physical thaw of the Arctic isn't just some external event we watch on the news. It's actually an internal one, and it's reshaping the very landscape of the human mind.
Okay, so before we can really get into the psychology, we have to grasp the physical reality of what's happening. The Arctic is warming up at nearly 4 times the global average. Now, that's not just a statistic. It's a phenomenon called Arctic amplification, and it's the engine driving everything we're about to talk about.
So, where does the first ripple from all this melting ice hit? Well, it's not in the oceans. It's right inside our heads. And this is so real that it's actually sparked a brand new field, cryopsychology. It's the study of the emotional and mental fallout of living in a world that's losing its permanent ice. At the heart of all this is a concept called ontological security. Now, I know, it's a mouthful, but the idea is actually super simple. It's that deep-down feeling that the world is stable and predictable. You know, the sun comes up, the seasons change. For thousands of years, the huge, seemingly permanent ice at the poles was a bedrock of that security. And now, we can all see it cracking.
There's this really powerful metaphor for this, the white shield. The cryosphere was like this psychological buffer for humanity, a giant, shining symbol of permanence in a world that can feel pretty chaotic. So as that shield visibly gets thinner and starts to break apart, our collective feeling of a stable future is eroding right along with it.
And when that security starts to crumble, it creates this new kind of emotional pain. I mean, we all know what nostalgia is, right? That ache you feel for a home you've had to leave. But this introduces a newer idea, solastalgia. It's the grief you feel when the home you love is being ruined right in front of you. You haven't gone anywhere, but it feels like your home is leaving you.
And look, this is not just some abstract theory. The data is backing it up. Projections for 2025 suggest that a staggering 65% of young adults in nations right there on the edge of the Arctic will feel a pervasive sense of loss that's tied directly to the melting ice. That's solastalgic in numbers.
And here's the kicker. This feeling isn't just stuck up in the north. You know how a storm system in the Arctic can change the weather in New York? Well, this psychological trauma ripples out in the exact same way. It's what's being called a teleconnected anxiety, a shared, global grief for a frozen world most of us have never even seen, but we feel in our bones as essential.
So this deep psychological shift leads us straight into the next ripple effect. And this one, it's a massive ethical crisis. Because as the ice disappears, it doesn't just reveal new land and resources, it exposes a fundamental and kind of scary paradox at the very heart of how we do business.
And this is the trap, laid out right here. It's this insane feedback loop. Step 1, a warming planet melts the ice. Step 2, all this new stuff is exposed, resources, faster shipping routes. Step 3, we, of course, race to exploit them. And step 4, using these very resources just accelerates the warming that started the whole cycle. It is a perfect, self-destructing machine.
For decades, really, this was the only question that mattered in geopolitics. It was all about drawing lines on a map, planting a flag, and claiming whatever was locked away under all that ice. But all that melting ice is forcing a massive shift in the conversation. It's not about ownership anymore. The real question is about responsibility. Who is responsible for making sure the Arctic can still do its job as the planet's air conditioner?
And that one single question, that shift from what can I own to what am I responsible for, well, it's forcing a whole new ethic to emerge. We're slowly, maybe painfully, starting to move away from a mindset of just taking things and towards one of long-term care, of stewardship.
Just look at how different these two models are. The old way, sovereign extraction, was all about short-term GDP growth. Ice was valuable because you could get minerals or fresh water from it. And the time frame was, what, the next annual budget? The new model, this idea of multigenerational stewardship, has a completely different goal, long-term planetary health. Here, the value of ice is its ability to regulate the entire globe's temperature. And we're not thinking about fiscal years. We're thinking about stability for the next 3 centuries. It's a total reboot of what value even means.
So how do we actually adapt to this new world?
Well, it's not just about building bigger seawalls. It's about what's being called anticipatory adaptation. Basically, getting ourselves psychologically ready for a world that's just different. And a massive part of this involves learning from indigenous communities who've always understood that the environment isn't something you conquer, it's an extension of who you are, a shift from dominion to connection.
All right, for our last section, let's bring it all together. We're going to see how technology, our choices, and this idea of transparency are all colliding to define what comes next. Because in the end, the future of the Arctic really does come down to us.
One of the biggest game changers here is something called hypertransparency. We're talking about AI-powered satellites and sensors that are watching every single square meter of the Arctic in real time. I mean, think about that. There's literally nowhere left to hide. Any illegal drilling, any unauthorized shipping, it's all instantly visible to the entire planet.
And what happens when you have this constant, undeniable stream of data? It fuels a whole new kind of activism. It gives people the hard evidence they need to demand accountability from governments and corporations, and it's completely changing the game for environmental protection.
The source material for this explanator calls this whole moment the turn of the tide. It's such a great metaphor because it's not just about the changing currents in the ocean. It's a turning point for all of us. A moment where the melt is forcing us to let go of old, comfortable ideas about our world and our place in it.
And that really brings us to the absolute core of it all. You know, technology can watch and data can inform, but neither of them can make the final choice. The ultimate variable in the whole climate equation isn't carbon. It's the human spirit. It's our capacity for empathy, for innovation, and our courage to actually adopt this new ethic of stewardship.
So we're left with this question. The old world, the one with a predictable climate and that comforting sense of permanence, it's disappearing. The challenge, and honestly the opportunity for every single one of us, is to decide what we're going to build on that new, uncertain ground.